Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host Anthony the Great Rivardo here today. We're talking Kyle Pitts' alternative mock draft, going through the first round, maybe what the Giants could do to find a tight end to match up with Evan Ingram, or maybe if they try to trade Evan Ingram, who they could replace him with. Now, we've done the Kyle Pitts film review. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out on the YouTube channel. We've done the mock draft with Kyle Pitts, talked about what he's capable of doing. We're going to run through that one last time. And an alternative for Kyle Pitts if the Giants do want to go look at a tight end who can revolutionize that side of the game for them. Evan Ingram, as we know, dropped 11 passes last year. 5 interceptions were directly correlated to him and dropping the football, and he had a fumble against the Cincinnati Bengals, so he was responsible for about 6 total turnovers. Really unacceptable from a guy who's going into his 5th year. I'm not too convinced that the Giants are going to extend him on a multi-year deal, so we'll see what the Giants do there and what Evan Ingram really can do in his 5th-year option in 2021. But before we dive into this alternative for Kyle Pitts and run through all these different things, Anthony, my friend, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I watched a little bit of the other guy that we're going to watch today, and I was very excited. I was like, man, that was a murder. He absolutely murdered somebody. It'll be on the screen. You'll see it if you're watching on YouTube. This guy, Pat Friarmuth, I mispronounce his name every single time.
You got it.
According to Alex, yes, I got it. Let's go. Give me my sticker to put on my shirt for the day, right? Pat Friarmuth, he can absolutely kill people. Like, he just runs with such violence and power. And I'm excited to talk about him. I'm also excited to touch on Kyle Pitts again. You know, we already did the film breakdown. We talked about him. That was fun. And he's still very intriguing to me. I've given my opinion on what I want the Giants to do at 11 a few times now. And Kyle Pitts is probably not my pick. But if they go with Kyle Pitts, I'm not going to be upset about it. I think that he's a really intriguing prospect. There's a lot to like there. But when you look at the second, third round tight ends, second round, that's kind of what we're talking about here with Pat Friarmuth. Second round, maybe like a late first round if another team snags him or if the Giants trade back or something. Something like that. This guy's really intriguing as well. Like, really interesting. Like, very different from Kyle Pitts. Different style of tight end play. But just as effective and just as interesting, man, because this is a guy who can really get violent and get dirty and not as finesse. It's like, do you want the finesse guy in Kyle Pitts or do you want the power guy in Pat Friarmuth? So that's what I'm interested to break down and talk about, and Alex has a lot to say about both of those guys, so I'll let him get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with Kyle Pitts, we know what he has. He brings to the offense just this diversity and versatility in the passing game specifically. I've watched his tape. I've seen his blocking technique, and it's not very good. He really loses a lot of reps against bigger pass rushers. He's not the most, thick guy. He's like, 240 pounds, 6'5", something like that. He has some good size to him. He's about 2 or 3 inches taller than Evan Ingram. So I think he has room to grow with the blocking specifically, but he's really known as a pass-catching tight end out of Florida. That is what he is known for, what all the scouts are raving about. And Mel Kiper,
6'6", 235.
6'6", 235. So yeah, he's got some size. He's got some room to grow if they really want to put some more mass on him. But when you look at Mel Kiper from ESPN, he just mocked Kyle Pitts to the Giants at 11. So very interesting there. Maybe they try to trade Evan Ingram, get some draft capital back, or they want to go 12 personnel with Kyle Pitts and Evan Ingram, and that would be very interesting to see. That's 2 very big playmakers to work with on the offense, in line and at the X and Z wide receiver spots, even in the slot. The thing about Kyle Pitts is he can actually play inside and out. He can play inline. He can play outside wide receiver. He can cross-train at those positions, which is really rare for a tight end. That's not something you see very often. I think he set the record for most 15-plus yard plays downfield for a tight end playing outside receiver. So we know he can match up against corners. We know he can match up against safeties, against linebackers, and he can win in coverage. In the film breakdown, Anthony hates when we do 50-50 balls, but he catches pretty much every 50-50 ball that goes his way. You throw it up to him in the end zone, he's catching it in single coverage, double coverage. You saw him even get one in triple coverage. So the guy is really capable of coming down with the football. He has very good spatial awareness, really good body control, and he high points the football, which is what you want from receivers. And he has that elite trait to be able to catch the football and not drop the football like Evan Ingram does 11 times last year. Kyle Pitts doesn't drop the football. That's why he's being mocked as an 11th round pick to the Giants. But the alternative for him, in my opinion, is Pat Friarmuth. And the reason is he's kind of another interesting prospect that is a lot different of a tight end. He's 6'5", 6'6", right in between there, and he's 250 pounds, a little bit more room to grow. He has more size, and like Anthony said, he plays violent football. He is vicious. Just like if you saw the clip that I'm going to post
He
a little bit
plays
earlier.
walking around the backyard with a sledgehammer football, man.
Yeah, whatever that means, that's exactly how he plays. He plays like he wants to hurt somebody. You know, that's the kind of football that Joe Judge likes, the kind of football that Dave Gettleman likes, that they are going out there to hurt somebody, play old school smash mouth football, hit you in the nose for 60 minutes. That is the type of player that Pat Friarmuth is. He's not the most developed blocker, but he's better than Kyle Pitts in my opinion, and I think he has so much more room to grow because he's also bigger. And when you have a bigger body, bigger frame at a tight end position, you know, you can develop those technical standpoints. And I know the Giants do have Freddie Kitchens as the tight end coach right now. So if he does stick around for another season, Pat Friarmuth would really benefit from having Freddie Kitchens as his coach. So, you know, he also, it's important to note that Friarmuth also did miss a lot of games last year. He only played in 4 games. He had a shoulder surgery that ended his season prematurely. But with that being said, you know, he is still an interesting prospect that I think the Giants could look at if he dropped to the second round. Or if the Giants decided, you know, let's say Zach Wilson or Justin Fields are on the board. You know, let's say Washington, a team that needs a quarterback, is going to trade up. Or, you know, let's say San Francisco, they want to trade up. Pat Friarmuth could be on the board for them, you know, at 20, between 25, and maybe you take a flyer on him because of the potential he offers. And 12 personnel, Jason Garrett loves to use 2 tight ends, multiple tight ends, especially in the run blocking system he uses. And with Friarmuth, you know, you can use him in line a ton. You can use him in the slot. You can use him as kind of a fullback kind of looking tight end, though they do with Travis Kelce a lot of times, and use him in different creative ways in the backfield. So I really like what he offers he's actually a little faster than you can imagine. One of the knocks on him is his speed, but if you watch him play, he plays faster than people give him credit for. But again, the power, the violence that he has as a tight end is really what I like to see from him. But Anthony, you know, when you're comparing Kyle Pitts to Pat Friarmuth, you know, what are the differences that you see, and what could the Giants benefit from by taking a flyer on a guy like Friarmuth?
In terms of the differences that I see, I think their playing style is just like completely different. You know, like maybe you could say that the fact that Friarmuth is so strong is his biggest strength. You know, it allows him to make a lot of contested catches, you know, but it's kind of different, right? You know, like I'm not the biggest contested catch guy, but with a guy like Friarmuth, he's just so large. I could honestly see his contested catch rate translate into the NFL. He's kind of one of those guys that just you can't really get your hands on him, you know? He's just going to box you out, play basketball with you, you know, and just go up there and make some plays. He had 8 contested catches on 23 receptions in 2020, which is like a really high rate. He was actually really good, though. He only played in 4 games. He had an injury. But in terms of him versus Kyle Pitts, when you look at Kyle Pitts, I see more of, I'll say, a route runner, right? You see a guy with Friarmuth, who's kind of just this big body bulldozer, and then you see a more refined route runner. Like, if you want to make the comparison, let's do pro comparisons, you know, and this does not indicate their ceilings, but if you want to do pro comparisons, Kyle Pitts, you probably say he's Darren Waller, right? Darren Waller is a really good route runner, makes those contested catches, but really wins by getting open and making a lot of plays like that. Now, Darren Waller is probably a better route runner. Is probably making more wide open receptions because he's better at separating. You know, this was a little knock that I had on Kyle Pitts. He's not separating at the rate that I thought he would, right? Like he was making a lot of contested catches in the film review. But he also did show some plays where he lined up as an X receiver and he does a slant route and you're like, man, that's rare. Tight ends can't do that. And like Pat Friarmuth can't do that. Friarmuth is not going to line up at tight end and run a slant route and get open. Okay, he's going to run, you know, little hook routes, those routes that Evan Engram ran all year, those hook routes, those stick routes, and he's going to catch those, though. Like, they're not going to bounce off his hands. They're just going to hit him right in the chest, and he's going to catch him because he's going to be body checking some dude while he's catching it. So in terms of that, you know, like when you look at Kyle Pitts, he didn't have any drops. He was phenomenal this year. He had 5 deep touchdown receptions, and he had 11 contested catches, which is even more than what Friarmuth had, but Friarmuth played a fraction of the game, so you have to keep that in mind. Friarmuth is getting a lot of his production based off of contested catches. Now, yes, I said that it's different, but at the same time, I'm still not crazy about that. I like to see guys who get open. There's 2 different styles of tight end, though, in the NFL right now. There's the guys like Kyle Pitts who get open, and there's the guys like Friarmuth who are more old school football. And this is old school football. So his pro comparison, you probably say, is like Rob Gronkowski, right? He's a huge guy. You can't catch him. You can't bring him down. and he's just going to go up there and catch everything, and he can block. He's got the traits to be an elite run blocker. We haven't necessarily seen him be an elite run blocker yet. We've seen him be a very good one, but he can certainly improve. But you know what? That's why he's a college prospect, and he's coming into the draft. He's going to get NFL coaching, and he should improve on that. So he's a guy that really could be a very well-rounded, balanced tight end who can make plays in the receiving game, but also really help your team in the running game as a blocker, and maybe even in the passing game as a pass protector if you want to put him there. I know Giants fans, we've seen Evan Engram stand there in pass protection a few times, and we've all been like, why the hell is he pass protecting right now? He can't even run block, let alone pass block. Why is this happening? Now with Friarmuth, he's probably going to have some reps like that, but I think that his reps in terms of pass blocking more consistently will be better than Evan Engram's, of course, you know? And when you look at just the way he's built, dude, the size of him, like, it looks like Rob Gronkowski. He's just built, man.
They call him Baby Gronk.
Jacked. They do call him Baby Gronk because he looks like Gronk. He's just huge, man. He wears number 87 as well. Like, he's just built different. He's simply built different. He's built like that, all right? Like, I don't know. I'm really starting to enjoy looking at Friarmuth, read up on him, watch him. I really started to enjoy it. I think that he's really interesting. Alex has been telling me about him for a while now. He's been mentioning him over and over about how much he likes Friarmuth. So I'm really interested and curious to see how this pre-draft process goes for him, especially with this injury. I think that injury is really going to force him to drop, and I think he will be a second-round pick because of it. But I think that whatever team snags him in that second round is probably going to get a starting tight end for quite a while in the NFL. And one last thing I'll say, keep in mind, maybe it's just something with this archetype of tight end. Think about Jason Witten, think about Rob Gronkowski, this archetype of tight end, right? Like these big guys who are blockers but short receivers. These guys get injured a lot. Gronkowski suffered a lot of injuries. Jason Witten had a lot of injuries. Jason Witten played through pretty much every freaking injury, but he was on the injury report every week in the middle of his career, right? So maybe that's just a thing with guys like this. Friarmuth being in college, getting ready for the NFL, maybe he could have played through some injury, just didn't want to. You know, it better for his future to not play through an injury and risk re-injuring or aggravating or whatever. So just keep that in mind. You know, like these big guys, they get injured a lot, but if they're tough, they'll play through it. If not, then they might not succeed in the NFL. So I guess that'll be the key that NFL teams will try to interview him about. Can you play through injuries? Can you stay healthy and remain a durable athlete?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, we just saw Cole Beasley play with a broken fibula, right? Or tibia or something, right? I think it was a fibula. So players play through these injuries all the time, but when you're in college, you want to, you're playing for the future. You got to make a business decision like Darius Slayton made a couple weeks into this. Actually, I think it was later on this season. Just completely didn't try to go for the first down, just dove to the ground. Sometimes you're going to make that decision because you're playing for the future. You don't want to get injured. So I get it if you're in college. Pat Friarmuth, got shoulder surgery, and he ended up returning later on in the season. So it's not like he decided I'm just gonna sit it out. He tried to come back and tried to help his team, which is pretty admirable. I would say that's a pretty good sign for a player, wanting to come back and help his team as soon as possible.
One other thing I'll say to that, you would much rather a guy coming out of college have an upper body injury than a lower body injury. The lower body ones are the ones that linger and that get re-injured and re-aggravated and just show up over and over and over again. Look at Rondale Moore, out of Purdue. We Alex and I were talking about him before we started recording. He's really interesting, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field, and he's been dealing with consecutive lower body injuries. Friarmuth had a shoulder injury. That shouldn't affect his long-term success in the NFL. It's not, a knee injury.
Well, that's exactly why he's being mocked as a potential first-round pick, because despite the shoulder injury that made him miss really a lot of games this past year, he's still being mocked pretty high, which is a good indication that he's going to return fully healthy. And he did make a return towards the end of the season, so that's a pretty good indication that he is healthy. But he reminds me a lot of TJ Hawkinson, actually. Really, really similar body and frame. Receiving tight end specifically, but I think maybe Hawkinson's a little bit better of a blocker. But I think development here. You're thinking, I'm not taking Friarmuth in the top 20 picks. He's a 25 to 35 type of selection. So if the Giants somehow ended up with a pick in that range, I wouldn't be opposed to getting him because, he's someone that offers immediate impact value, but also someone that develops, if he develops correctly and well with, maybe a coach like Freddie Kitchens there, he could be a top tight end in the NFL. I really do think he has that potential. And he's a vicious player. He plays with a chip on his shoulder, and he loves to hit people. And I love players that love to hit people because that is what football is all about. Hitting the crap out of people and grinding out yards and picking up those first downs after contact. That's what you want to see, that desire. Really not, you don't want to see a player that dives to the floor, doesn't want to get the extra yards. Pat Friarmuth will carry bodies with him to the first down. He will also use his agility. He's really agile for a player of his size, and he can actually make guys miss in the open field. So I think, he's a stellar prospect, someone that I've been looking at for a while now, and I think if the Giants did have a chance at him, they shouldn't pass, or maybe not pass, but just consider him a little bit more than previously thought. But again, the Dallas Cowboys, he's a guy, honestly, like I'm thinking about Friarmuth, and I said this to Anthony before, I think the Dallas Cowboys might be looking at Friarmuth and saying, this is our next premier tight end. He fits their scheme and their mold so well because Kellen Moore knows how to use every offensive weapon on the team. You get a guy like Friarmuth who one-on-one is going to beat most coverage matchups. That is what tight ends are. The modern-day tight end is built to disrupt defenses in the middle, intermediate portions of the field and create mismatches and win the mismatches. That is what modern-day NFL tight ends are meant to do, receiving guys primarily. They're not supposed to be these elite-level blockers. We don't see that anymore. They're more receiving than they are blocking, for the most part. So, that's what I'm seeing in Friarmuth as a potential guy. He did have some dropping problems, but he catches the ball so smoothly. It's not like Evan Ingram where he, jumps and tries to catch the ball, or he, tries to, I don't even know what this is. He tries to do, weird stuff when he tries to catch the ball, and Anthony points this out all the time. His technical, standpoint when it comes to trying to catch the football is very off at times, and Friarmuth catches it very, very fluid. It's very fluid motion. It looks natural to me. So I think you can get rid of some of those problems. Darius Slayton was dropping everything that came his way, and then he got rid of that problem for the most part. He did have a couple drops here and there, but the problem, alleviated mostly in his rookie season. So I think that's kind of why I wanted to talk about Friarmuth as a potential alternative to Kyle Pitts, because while I do love Pitts and I love the idea of, the cross-training at tight end and wide receiver, and what he offers is a 50-50 ball jumper and really an elite route runner from the tight end position, because he can beat cornerbacks, actual cornerbacks as an outside guy. He can also, beat guys up the seam, whether it's a linebacker or a safety. He can do so many things, but he doesn't play violent football. Anthony used the perfect word before. He's a finesse tight end. He's a guy that's going to find those zones in coverage. He's going to use his speed, agility, and body control to get there, but he's not going to run anybody over. He's not going to catch the ball in short area spaces and look to lower his shoulder and bulldoze people. That's not his game. But Friarmuth, that is his game, and I do love that bulldozing style, Gronkowski, baby Gronk. That's the perfect name for Friarmuth, in my opinion. I think it fits him perfectly. But Anthony, do you think that the Giants, let's say if they traded back to 20, 25, maybe 20 to 30 range and just acquired some more draft picks, do you think that they should actually give Friarmuth some consideration and maybe, look at him as a potential option in the first round, especially when they do need a wide receiver and maybe a couple of more pieces?
Some consideration? Sure, why not? I'm not saying definitely he should be a round one pick for the Giants, even if that's in the back end of the first round, but some consideration? Sure. The only thing is, I think that with Friarmuth, I look at him for the Giants, he would be the second tight end on the roster. I don't think they're going to move on from Evan Ingram. I don't think that that's in their plans, and I don't think that Friarmuth would step in and just be tight end number one over Evan Ingram. I feel like he's kind of that guy that you drafted in round 2 to pair with Evan Ingram. So then you get that fire and ice, right? You get that quick finesse guy who goes out there and runs routes as a receiver in Evan Ingram, and then you get that big mean bully who just is a wrecking ball all over the field like Friarmuth, and you have fire and ice. And I think that's really interesting. It could really be a nice new layer to the Giants' offense if they decide to go that route. One thing I'll say, though, I think if we were to go that route, Friarmuth were to start playing for the Giants, I think pretty quickly he would emerge as the number one tight end in the scheme just based on how he plays and how that fits Jason Garrett's scheme, right? Because I think that Jason Garrett, we talk a lot about, the route running and the contested catching thing, or at least I do. I rant about that all the time, don't I, Alex, right? So for Friarmuth, yeah, maybe he's not getting wide open in route running, but the difference is, and the reason that I'm okay with it and still like Friarmuth is because he's not touted as a Swiss Army knife who's going to go line up at the X receiver, the Z receiver, the slot, and then inline tight end. He's not touted as that. He's literally touted as just a genuine inline tight end who's going to go out there, sit in a flat, open zone, catch the ball, and then probably fall forward for like 10 yards. Like, that's what he is, and that's exactly what fits Jason Garrett's offense. He is like a perfect scheme fit for this offense, and that's the way that I see it. So I would be happy with Friarmuth. I don't know if I would actually pull the trigger on him in round 1. But round 2, say the Giants don't even trade back. Say round 1, say they sign a receiver in free agency. Then round 1 they go with Caleb Farley. Let's throw that name out there. Let's say they go cornerback in round 1 at pick 11. And then round 2 they're on the board again, and Friarmuth is still sitting there. I would absolutely do it. That's kind of the scenario that I see. I think round 2, that what is it, the 43rd
yeah,
pick
43rd,
I think we have? 43rd pick. I would love Friarmuth at number 43. I think that would be a great pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in the same boat. I don't think I'm trading back to acquire Friarmuth unless you're getting a second and third round pick in the deal. I'm not looking to trade back at all. I think you have to consider it always. You pick up the phone. Don't pull a Gettleman and not pick up the phone for Saquon. But the reality is like the Giants do need to fill a bunch of holes rather. But when you're at 11, there's always going to be a player that falls out of the top 10. There's always going to be somebody that's best player available. You take the guy. You don't look back. So I think that's some of the Giants that are going to be looking to do. But with that being said, the Giants have the 43rd overall pick. Friarmuth did miss a ton of time this past year. You never know when a player is going to drop. You really just don't. You can't tell. There's a ton of really talented wide receivers that are going to go in that early second round range. There's a ton of interior defensive linemen that are going to go in that early second round range. Some pass rushers. And offensive linemen too. The offensive linemen are really going to go in the late first round. There's always a couple that get scattered in the first to top 10, top 15, but I think a lot of them are going to go in that late first round, early second round range. So you could totally see Friarmuth dropping to 43. Anything is possible. A lot of people will probably disagree with that, which is totally reasonable because he is that talented of a player. But you never know. If they do fall to the Giants, I would really consider Friarmuth as an option. I really like him as a prospect, just his size, his overall athletic ability. And what he's shown on tape is just really, really fun to watch. He is an aggressive, physical, and just bulldozing tight end. And we haven't had someone like that since Jeremy Shockey. Or you could make the argument for Jake Ballard. You could make the argument for others. But I think, Jeremy Shockey's really the last guy I remember that just lowered his shoulder and just played vicious football. You know what I mean? That's the guy who Pat Friarmuth is. He is baby Gronk. He lays his shoulder. He can catch the ball in traffic. He can make plays, and I really like him as a prospect. So that's my alternative for Kyle Pitts. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thank you so much for the support, all the love on really every channel, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And of course, we will catch you guys on the next one.